Central Australia, more than 500,000 square miles that has been called the Red Centre. Though some of the soil is fertile, grasses and trees can never really prosper in this vast land where rainfall is low, unpredictable and capricious. But there is water here, sub-artesian water that sometimes forces its way to the surface. This is a hill now, a hill built of sand brought up by the water. The sand will quickly settle, leaving it pure, cool, life-preserving. We're going south, traveling some 600 miles towards the Nullarbor Plain, the treeless plain, and the long steel tentacles of the Transcontinental Railway that stretch from Perth to Adelaide. This is country where the hardy saltbush, good sheep fodder, grows fairly abundantly. This scattered, stunted growth is important because it represents the only fodder that can survive in the pitifully small rainfall. And yet, sheep are raised here. Station owners talk not of sheep to the acre, but of acres to each sheep. That's why, as far as the eye can see and far beyond, it's just one property, Wilgena, of very nearly 2 million acres in extent. It carries 45,000 sheep, or one sheep to every 40 acres. The blue bush and saltbush, with myall and mulga, represent almost all the vegetation that grows on a property of 3,000 square miles, about 1/16 the size of England. This scale map gives you the comparison. One sheep station as big as East Anglia, stretching from the Wash almost to the Thames. The homestead, centre of the vast property. 450 miles from Adelaide, it generates its own light and power and is fitted with most modern appliances. Rainfall is the most important single item in wool growing here, and managers and overseers keep a weather eye cocked on rain gauges. This property's average is about 5.5 inches of rain a year. A variation of even a few points makes a big difference in a reading as low as that. The straight line shows the mean average rainfall 5.595 inches, and the moving line indicates how rainfall has fluctuated over 26 years. The station works practically as a self-contained community. Though distant from the city of Adelaide, it has the advantage of the Transcontinental Railway passing directly through the property. Supplies are thus fairly easily obtainable. And it's no good trying to take repairs to the local garage. It's 400 miles away. So the station maintains its own engineer shop and permanent staff. Repairs must be done on the spot, for motor vehicles are of paramount importance in country like this. Even the children are mechanically minded, but they won't stray beyond the front gate. They'd starve before they reached it. An outstation and a water tank. Most of us take water for granted, but here it's the difference between thriving flocks and disaster. The people who live here are pioneers, and like the people of biblical days, they did not, and I quote, condemn a land because water flowed not upon its surface. They digged wells. The wells here may be anything from 40 to 200 feet deep. One bore has to be driven 500 feet down to tap the sub-artesian water. From the tanks, the water is taken through 80 miles of pipes on this property alone, and the troughs through which it passes are constantly cleaned and swept out so that the sheep are assured of clean, fresh water. When the troughs are clean, the pumps begin to work again, lifting the water from its resting place deep in the bowels of the earth. There's always a breeze in the wide open spaces, and the pumps suck steadily, greedily, bringing life from below the red soil. But in a property of nearly 2 million acres, a 16th of all England, remember, there's a need for a lot of windmills, a lot of tanks, a lot of pipes to carry the water. Wilgena is bisected by the Transcontinental Railway connecting Perth in Western Australia with the eastern states. The station has a lengthy internal telephone system connecting up outstations and some wells. This map will indicate the immensity of the task of sinking wells, installing tanks and windmills. Each dot represents a well, big installation cost, and a lot of hard work. The hollow circle dots represent tanks, and the straight lines the reticulation system through pipelines. Bringing water to 45,000 sheep has been a big job successfully accomplished. Kelpies and border collies are used on the plains, and each one does the work of 3 men. There are no stockmen, and the boundary riders and shepherds are mechanized. Probably on no other sheep property in the world are sheep worked without the aid of horses and entirely by means of mechanized transport. Men who have beaten the problems of lack of fodder, lack of water, and isolation aren't going to be beaten by an 80-mile ride to repair a fence. Surrounding this enormous property with fencing was a large-scale operation. Not only had the sheep to be kept in, but rabbits, which would destroy the scanty pastures, had to be kept out. So did dingoes, the Australian native dog, which slaughters sheep in hundreds. Boundary riders constantly patrol the fences looking for breaks which must be repaired. More than 400 miles of vermin-proof fences have been built on this property, and they have to be kept intact. The boundary fences must be 5 feet high to keep the dingo out. Wilgena sheep are fine, sturdy types, despite the rugged conditions under which they live. It's mustering time, and with the Kelpies and border collies ready for work, station hands go out after the flocks. They're scattered in every part of the 3,000 square miles of country. No wonder it's quicker to do a mechanized roundup. It would be a 2-day ride on horseback even to reach sheep in outlying parts. Men, their bikes, and the hard-working, intelligent sheep dogs who always ride when there's no work to be done, combine with uncanny skill, heading off stragglers and gradually bringing them back into the big flock. As the muster proceeds, some of the dogs hop back on the bikes to see the fun. They're big sheep, these fellows, and they'll cut about 4, well above the Australian average. Gradually, dogs and men maneuver the sheep into yards near the shearing sheds. Soon will be seen the result of a year's patience and work and struggle against inhospitable nature. Flocks come in on regular schedule so that home paddocks are not overcrowded with waiting sheep. Contract shearers have arrived by car and truck, and soon the shearing board is buzzing with the sound of mechanical shears. These men are highly skilled and may shear up to 200 sheep a day. An almost barren land produces first-class wool. These sheep yield thousands of pounds of it, and now they'll go back to spend another year among the mulga, myall, and bluebush to produce more. Man's pioneering enterprise has made this possible, but without the bores he sinks and the fences he builds, no flock could live in the area. But before they go back to the outlying parts of the 2-million-acre property, the sheep are spray-dipped to protect them from vermin. They get a thorough spraying, despite the fact that this part of Australia is remarkably free of pests. On the health of her flocks depends the quality of Australia's wool, and every precaution is taken with it. After spraying, they go to a draining pen until they are quite dry, and then they are returned to their pasture, not to be disturbed for another year. As shearing goes on, wool classers grade the fleeces to ensure even quality. This is skilled work too, and highly paid. The graded fleeces are then pressed into bales, and the wool is ready for transportation to the markets of the world. It takes courage and enterprise to raise flocks in a vast, almost barren expanse previously inhabited only by wandering tribes of aborigines and a few native animals. But the desert has been made to yield water, and modern transport has conquered space. The war-torn world needs wool, and it's getting some of it, high-quality wool, from Australia's sheep in the desert.